Welcome to The New Next, a podcast that addresses current events and how they will impact the future. Co-hosted by the inquisitive public speaking champion, Mike McVeigh, and energy, economics, and technology expert, Matt Jensen. Join us as we explore all things energy, economic, tech, and political, and how they will affect our future. Podcasts typically grow by word of mouth. If you know anyone who would enjoy this content, sharing this in a message or by posting on social media would mean the world to us. Thanks for listening, and let's get started.
All right. So something that might be a little bit more pressing to the current world, and as I'm getting ready to literally drive to Chicago tomorrow on my way to Detroit later this week, gas prices have continued to rise. Last week around this time, it was at most $3.97 a gallon where I live. Today, the least expensive I could find in the greater metro area of Oklahoma City was $4.07, but usually about $4.15. And as crazy as that is, the thing that might be even crazier is that diesel prices have gone even more expensive, making regular gas prices to look kind of bad. And I understand there's a diesel shortage of some sort.
Yeah, we do have a strategic diesel stockpile in the U.S., but especially on the East Coast, a lot of people like Love's, for instance, were notifying trucking companies that they were likely to run out of diesel, and that diesel run trucks should fill up every single morning to make sure that they have enough. A lot of that,
Wow.
With our refining capacity in the U.S., a lot of that's set up to handle different types of oil refining. And with the Russian sanctions, we basically shut out our one of our biggest sources of heavy oil supply to run these refineries. So we produce light oil. So that's basically, there's an API rating, and that's I believe primarily between 50 and 60 API. Probably like 97 to 99% of the oil that we import into this country is considered heavy oil, and most of that is 40 or below. So, even down in the 20s and stuff. It comes from places like Saudi Arabia. It came from Iran. It came from Venezuela. It came from Russia. So cutting out that 800,000 barrels a day approximately that we imported from Russia has left some of these refineries that are set up to handle that type of crude without a proper feedstock for it. And so there's a lot to it, coming out of the COVID situation too, having really kind of uncertain demand for gasoline.
Right.
It's, the demand came back really fast. And as we talked a lot about before, you can't just turn on a giant market like this at a flip of a switch.
Right. Now, how much, so when you're talking about the sanctions against Russia, that's not the same thing as when, my understanding is that they've also been halting gas deliveries to some of the Scandinavian countries like Finland, Netherlands, Denmark. That's a separate issue altogether than the sanctions, correct?
Well, so yeah, this is different, but we can talk about that in a minute. Okay. So out of probably an imported barrel of crude oil, you basically heat the oil and it lets off basically the light gasoline is the first to kind of distill out in the refining process, and the heavy oil part, so like the diesel and stuff like that, is the last to. That's kind of a crude explanation of crude oil. Ha ha ha. but
You'll be here all podcast.
Yeah. So out of a barrel of oil, you're probably going to get like 11 or 12 gallons of diesel out of a barrel of oil. So if you take out 800,000 barrels, that's basically like 8 to 9 million gallons of gasoline out of the system. Right. And when you've got a very well-balanced system, that can kind of create issues. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know really how to respond to that, but okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it's like diesel is what our primary trucking fleet runs on.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's, the fact that oil or gasoline may be $4, but diesel might be $6. That's probably really factored into a lot of inflation that we're seeing too. And there's a lot of, we've talked a lot about inflation, but there's a lot of factors going into it. I think people are underestimating the price that inflation effects caused by energy prices. So you have the monetary elements, but and then that feeds into wages and stuff too. But
right.
Diesel at $6 when you had it in the $2s like a year ago.
Yeah,
that's pretty extreme.
Yeah,
or a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's definitely been an extreme increase on multiple levels.
Yeah,
but
if you want to learn more, find us at thenewnextpodcast.com or matthewadjensen.com/podcast, where you can suggest a topic you would like us to cover. If you enjoyed what you heard, share the podcast, tell a friend about it, or rate us 5 stars. We appreciate you listening.